What's going on, everybody? So I've had similar intros to similar videos in the past as I prepare to effectively rail on EA for the next 10 minutes or so. I want to clarify that I don't like doing this as someone that spends a lot of time playing Madden, frankly more than I or anyone else should. I think enjoying the game comes with the ability to be critical. And as a creator for content of this game with my channel and my roster, which I can proudly say is the best roster available on all of Madden, even more so than what EA offers. The amount of people that have told me that they can't even use EA's roster anymore, they have to use mine, that's just so much more realistic, has given me the confidence to say that. Call me biased, I don't really care. But as a contributor of sorts to this game, I think it is more than fair to be critical, especially when something like their current roster is so inexplicably inaccurate. And I've made videos in the past detailing what I mean by that. I'll regurgitate some of those points in this video, but there's just some things that really make me question what the guys at EA are doing. This roster seems pretty clearly getting worse and worse every year, and given that so many people are passionate about these ratings, including actual NFL players themselves, it just really makes me question what's going on here. I think there's tons of factors, reasoning, things that go into this here that I'll kind of dive in throughout the course of this video. First off is going to be, I think they're putting way too much over-exaggeration on PFF ratings, which let's talk about that right out the gate here with their number 10 player on the list of the 10 most laughable ratings of players in Madden's roster right now. So now I actually work for PFF. I'm in no way trying to discredit PFF grades. I happen to think these are the most accurate snapshot out there of how a player is playing in a given time frame. But it is also important to understand how to read these things, which clearly to me EA does not. So let us use my first player here, Kevin Byard, as an example. Kevin Byard is currently rated as an 89 overall, tied for the third highest free safety, 6th overall among safeties. Byard came into the league last year as a third-round pick and slowly emerged as the starting free safety for a poor Tennessee defense in 2016. Heading into this year, he would have been tagged as a likely starter for this team. Certainly nobody of serious note, definitely not a game-breaking player, a guy offensive coordinators dread scheming against, which an 89 overall is saying that he is. In 2017, he has played 99.7% of snaps for his team and has solidified himself as the starter here, and a solid starter at that, but an 89 overall? Now, coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, Kevin Byard is the third overall safety in PFF's ratings, as well as a 90.8 rating. Pretty clearly here, Madden is copy and pasting that grade into their Madden rating. Now, this to me is what makes me super disappointed. It just seems so lazy and shows no effort to look into the factors of what that rating has and what it really is. You know, a Madden rating should reflect the NFL value of the player, and a PFF grade is more of a snapshot of how the guy has played in a given time frame. I think there's a clear distinction there. So has Byard impressed this year? Yes, and his rating should be rising in turn, just as it has in my roster. But for a player to skyrocket as much as he has from the mid-70s to a franchise cornerstone, superstar level player as an 89, this is a joke. No PFF rating taken from a slate of 13 games should be enough to justify that big of a jump for a guy who was a third-round pick and a question mark entering the year. And then you look at the QBs this guy's gotten to defend, and you might see why that PFF rating might be a little inflated. Going all the way back to week 1, let me rattle off the names of all the QBs the Titans have faced. Carr, Bortles, Wilson and Watson, Cutler, Brissett, Kaiser, Flacco, Dalton, Roethlisberger, Brissett, Savage, Gabbert. But you might say, there's some good names on there. Well, as the man responsible for limiting big plays, as the free safety, this supposed Titans superstar defender helped allow 27 points to Russell Wilson, 57 to Deshaun Watson, and 40 to Big Ben. You guys starting to see my point here? I think I've spent enough time on Byard, using him as sort of the scapegoat here to make a much bigger point, but I wanted to give you guys an insight right off the bat into all the thought that goes into my ratings here. I love PFF. I use those ratings to help make changes every single week, but whoever at EA is doing these ratings is either being incredibly lazy or is showing a lack of understanding in what PFF ratings mean and how much you should really put weight into. So let's move along. Amidst the topic of safeties, I have more guys on this list whose ratings are pretty laughable when you see how high a guy like Byard is. And those players are Clinton-Dix and Malik Hooker. Now, I wanted to bring these guys up right after Byard because they are rated a 79 and 78 respectively, both double freaking digits behind Byard. Now, I get that draft pedigree isn't everything, and the longer guys are in the league, it becomes less and less important, but these are all young players. Dix and Hooker, great combo of names, by the way. Don't report this video for explicit language, please. Were mid-first round picks. Now again, that doesn't always matter. Hell, look at Kelvin Pryor. But these guys went high for a reason. And Hooker, before his ACL injury, looked like a true cornerstone player. A guy that offenses have already noticed and will have to game plan around probably for the next decade. Can you really say the same about Kevin Byard? I don't think so. And Clinton-Dix, it's not that he's been some generational talent, but he's clearly a very, very good free safety. And in my opinion, this guy impacts games at least as much as Kevin Byard. I believe he's an 86 on my roster. So to have him a whole 10 overall behind Byard, man, I just don't get it. Moving on, but staying at safety still, another ridiculously overrated player, Tyvon Branch. Playing for his third NFL team, has been an on-again, off-again starter his whole career, found a nice fit with the Cardinals scheme this year, and found himself tied for 6th among safeties before ending his season in Week 10, talking about PFF ratings. Again, call it coincidence, call it laziness, but EA, whatever it is, PFF rating of 88.5, tied for 6th among safeties, and a Madden rating of 89, tied for 6th among safeties. This is just ridiculous. And this is on the opposite end of the spectrum from Byard, who is at least a young guy. At least with Byard, there's a chance he continues to grow, play consistent enough to reach that high mark, but 31 years old, Tyvon Branch playing on a 2-year, $8 million contract, has 9 good games, and then all of a sudden he's rated just behind Landon Collins, who was my vote for Defensive Player of the Year last year. It's pretty infuriating. And again, I don't mean any disrespect to Branch, and I'm not trying to provoke Cardinals fans. He's a really, really nice player, but EA's willingness to just place guys as franchise cornerstone players, true game-wrecking level players, is a huge problem with the roster and why it makes it completely unusable for me. So let's keep moving. Number 7, Zac Brown. Brown is an 86 overall and the 5th overall middle linebacker. This is the same Zac Brown who sat on the open market this spring for almost a month before signing a measly 1-year, $2 million contract with the Washington Redskins. Now, Zac Brown has always been a total Madden love child, as I like to call them. Those spark freaks who, it doesn't matter their other traits, they have size, speed, strength, acceleration, and hit power, and it doesn't really matter what the rest of their traits are. So maybe this is just Madden doing some kind of a pub stunt or an advertising move because Madden players love Zac Brown. Well, newsflash, being a great athlete doesn't make you a great player necessarily in real life. And the confusing thing here is Brown is the 50th overall linebacker in PFF. So now we're starting to see inconsistencies with how much weight they're putting on PFF, and we're starting to have a lack of understanding where they actually draw their ratings from. I think it's a case of whoever is doing these ratings falling back on maybe the tackle numbers for Zac Brown. Well, newsflash number 2, it's a middle linebacker's job to make tackles. There is a lot more that goes into evaluating this position, and in fact, the big diss on Brown has always been that he ignores coaches and strictly acts like a heat seeker. He doesn't stick to zones. He often loses his assignment. His style also often leads to missed tackles, where he ranks 5th in this category according to PFF. I have Brown as a mid-70s, a starting caliber linebacker who never really met his ceiling, but certainly not an 86 overall, making him one of the most valuable defensive players in the entire game. Again, the guy fetched only $2 million on the open market just this last spring. And number 6 is another middle linebacker that I can't understand. And maybe this is just the Packer fan inside me looking for a place to vent, but just one spot below Zac Brown is Blake Martinez as an 84 overall. Now, let me clarify, Martinez is a fine run defender, maybe even one of the better ones. But when you go and look at some of the guys rated behind him, true 3-down linebackers who you are comfortable with having on the field at all times, this rating for Martinez becomes a joke. Some of those guys will be mentioned here momentarily, but having watched plenty of Blake Martinez, believe me when I say he is simply too high. Watching this guy try and defend a tight end in play action, you can't tell me this guy deserves 88 awareness and 88 play recognition. Granted, his man coverage and zone coverage are in the 50s, which makes this rating a little more justifiable, but I'm essentially getting at here is something's off. Martinez is great against the run, but in my opinion, any linebacker playing behind Mike Daniels and Kenny Clark, likely the best interior run defending duo up front in the league right now, should be able to fill holes and wrap guys up and look just as good as Martinez. There are undrafted linebackers. Ben Boulware, Riley Bolo come to mind. These guys might look just as good as Martinez in this specific role. But there are so many players rated lower in Madden who you can actually have on the field on 1st and 2nd down in real life and not have to be terrified that any pass over the middle of the field is going to be wide open. Mike Evans owners in fantasy 2 weeks ago were furious that he had only 1 catch against Green Bay. If you go and watch that game, Tampa's game plan was straight up unheard of. They almost strictly used running backs and tight ends in the passing game to exploit specifically Blake Martinez in coverage, and it worked most of the game. Awareness and play recognition in this game help linebackers stop these things, so I don't get why Martinez is so high. So that is my gripe with Blake Martinez, and it's time to move on. Number 5 is the entire Brown secondary. It's just so bad. Like, I feel like at this point it's vanity to even ask if EA has given deep thought into the secondary of the Browns. Frankly, I can't really blame them if they haven't, but I will at least give it some time and research. To start, Jason McCourty, a starting caliber guy, but a guy who was, at the same time, cut by the Tennessee Titans of all teams. Yes, McCourty had a nice start and was even used to shadow players earlier on this year. But he's been remarkably mediocre since about week 7, so that's about 2 months of data there, which makes you think there is probably a reason this guy was cut in the first place, which is the case about 95% of the time with these expendable veteran guys. And by the way, the perfect example of why I don't overreact when a veteran guy comes in and has a few nice games, especially when they're acquired for such a cheap cost. It's just all part of the bigger picture here, all the little things that should go into a player's value, his rating. I mean, you want to raise a guy a few marks for overperforming this year, put McCourty in the mid to low 80s, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But they have him as the same damn overall as Jimmy Smith, Xavier Rhodes, and above Josh Norman as an 89 overall. Then Breen Bodie Calhoun falls into a whole nother massive gripe I have with EA, which is their inability to discern the value of a nickel corner from a true cover guy. This is something I will get into pretty heavily with my next player, but Calhoun is simply too high. 78 man, 84 zone, means you could put this guy on an outside receiver and expect success. The guy was undrafted last year and plays strictly in the nickel for a reason. And then how is Jamar Taylor probably the best player in this group, who just got paid a decent contract and isn't even having a bad year necessarily, a 76, rated the same as guys who teams don't even want in Antonio Cromartie, and 3 overall less than Jalen freaking Collins. among a list of probably 20 other corners that don't belong above Jamar Taylor. And then while being overly generous to McCourty and Calhoun, they totally take a dump on Jabril Peppers, who's got a tough job as the free safety for the Browns, frankly playing out of position. Hasn't been miserable this year. They have the first rounder as a 68 overall, and the guy hasn't even been that bad. You're telling me Kevin Byard is truly 21 overall better as a free safety than Jabril Peppers? That's just disappointing, EA. Disappointing. Number 4, we got Malcolm Jenkins. This will be my shortest monologue of the video, but I think with everything I've said about the safety ratings in this game, Malcolm Jenkins deserves better than being tied for the 12th best safety. He is the perfect example of a guy who is asked to do so much for a team that it's harder to actually look dominant out there. One play he's a linebacker, and the next he's covering Odell Beckham one-on-one, compared to a guy like Tyvon Branch, who has one very specific role in that defense. He's gonna stand out as an effective player in that role because that's what he does well, and they use him in that role for that reason. These are the kind of things that can inflate stats and PFF ratings. But Jenkins is the true definition of a game wrecker and a player, unlike Branch and Byard, who really do give offensive coordinators nightmare dreams on Monday trying to prepare for the guy. Let's keep moving. I want to give an honorable or maybe dishonorable mention to Matt Ryan and the quarterbacks overall. I called Matt Ryan as a 96 coming in, a total disaster. They have him down to a 90 now, but I called that a really bad look for EA. I called that he would regress and look much more like Andy Dalton than Aaron Rodgers, who he was rated the same as coming in, and that has all transpired. I said the exact same thing about Cam Newton, by the way, after his MVP season. I think QBs in this game are rated way too high, as you don't get nearly the talent differential that you see in real life. For me, 80 overall is the baseline for a true franchise quarterback, and a guy you're satisfied to actually build your team around. This line for me is drawn at Kirk Cousins, behind Cam Newton, and above Marcus Mariota. In my mind, there are 12 players in the league at this level. According to EA, there's 25. I could spend all day talking about how bad the ratings are in this game, but I think I've made my point for now. So we're into the top 3 on the list, and I mentioned this issue with nickel corners, and frankly, Madden really needs to get with the times here. The fact that there isn't a specific nickelback position in both the player management menu and in the depth chart is yet another inexcusable thing going on here. I say that because I mentioned Calhoun earlier, but one rating that really stands out is Patrick Robinson, currently a whopping 87 overall. This makes him the 16th best corner, and obviously a guy you'd be comfortable rolling out as your number 1 corner, number 1 outside corner in a game with 89 man, 87 zone, and 83 press. You guys, Patrick Robinson is playing on his 4th team in as many years. He's playing amidst arguably the most opportunistic defense in the league, the best pass rush outside of maybe the Chargers, and almost strictly as the nickel corner on this defense. Teams tried making Patrick Robinson an outside corner for 7 years, and he doesn't have the quickness or coverage ability to guard number 1 receivers. According to EA, go ahead, be just fine. Put him out on an island with Sammy Watkins, Keenan Allen, you should be A-okay. Look, there is such a simple solution here. You make that nickelback position, put a little more weight on play recognition, block shedding, tackling, pursuit, etc. And his overall being in the mid-80s is totally defensible. By the way, they need this position for Tyrann Mathieu, because there is no position in Madden to put him in that accurately reflects what he does in real life. But come on, Patrick Robinson's PFF rating is off the charts. Yes, as a nickel corner. I feel like I keep saying this, but is there anyone in the building here who can understand the difference here? Let's keep moving. I talked about linebackers earlier. Well, CJ Mosley is an 81 overall and tied for 12th among middle linebackers. The same overall, by the way, as Perry Riley Jr., who's been available for any team to come ahead and pick him up all season long. And the linebackers right above him: Deion Jones, Demario Davis, Reuben Foster, Danny Trevathan, Wesley Woodyard, Blake Martinez, Zac Brown, Ryan Shazier, Jarrell Freeman, and then the only 2 justifiable ones being Luke Kuechly and Bobby Wagner. Foster might get there eventually, and I think Trevathan deserves his current rating of an 83. but Mosley is both way too low overall, and the guys he's ranked behind make it inexplicable. I don't know why he grades out so poorly in PFF and statistically, but at some point you just gotta realize when a guy's a true game wrecker like Mosley, this dude is a total headache for your game planner, and he's used in so many ways. At some point you gotta just go with your gut on a guy. There aren't 11 other inside linebackers I'd rather have than CJ Mosley. There aren't even 3. Okay, and number 1 here, this is the guy who I first noticed and led me to dig into all this stuff, and it's Lamar Miller. The dude is the absolute definition of average, 20th overall running back on PFF, never tops the stat sheets, but usually hovers around average on film. He doesn't do any one particular thing very well. The guy just kind of exists. Yeah, his O-line isn't great, but with how explosive Miller supposedly is, going back to his combine scores, the guy rarely makes anybody miss, doesn't break huge runs, and I'm kind of done ranting about this because I feel like it's pretty commonplace at this point that Miller is just another dude, that huge contract he got 2 years ago was bad, but at least he is a starting running back in the NFL. Fine, but he's the guy on this list I would expect the most agreement on here because Lamar Miller is an 88 overall in vanilla Madden, making him not just the 5th overall running back in the league, but a transcendent talent, a franchise cornerstone player, ranked above the following players: LaShawn McCoy, Alvin Kamara, Todd motherfreaking Gurley, Melvin Gordon, Jordan Howard, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Carlos Hyde, among many other players you could certainly make an argument for. This one is just a massive head scratcher. So that does it. If you're on board with what I'm saying here, I very rarely ask for retweets and shares and stuff like that. But until someone brings this stuff to EA, they're going to just continue resting on their empire, keep making the same mistakes over and over again. For all the crap I talk about this game, I just want it to be the best game it can be. I want it to offer the most immersive football experience possible. So if you like what you heard in this video, you can help me out and help the rest of us out by helping promote the video. You know, I don't know if EA is going to come and hire me or whatever, but they should at least see this stuff I'm talking about so that they can consider it for their roster. So do like the video, but if you really do want to be proactive, it would take like 10 seconds to tag this video at Rex Dixon of EA. I will link his handle in the description here. You can tag any other EA folk on Twitter that you know of, and then upvote my post on Reddit just to promote the video. Really appreciate it. If you do tag myself in that tweet as well, I will follow back as a thank you. You never know with these things. Your tweet could be the one that makes EA see the video, and I think that'd be really cool. So do make sure you check out the roster if you don't already use it. It's Real 2018 on Xbox One. Just sort all files by total downloads. You'll see it right there. Make sure you load the roster after you download it. So I appreciate you all. Cheers, everyone. We'll see you next time.